My ex-husband and my new lover fought over me, and the elders also sent people to assassinate me. My alpha new lover got wounded by a silver blade while saving me but never abandoned me, taking me away to recover. The picnic table stood alone by the lakeside. Finley had already arrived, leaning against its edge with his back to me. His golden hair was gently tousled by the morning breeze, and from afar, he looked like a sculpture poised for action. I stopped 3 meters away from him, my hands instinctively clutching the hem of my clothes. My fingertips were almost digging into the fabric. "What exactly do you want from me?" I got straight to the point, keeping my voice as steady as possible, yet my heart was pounding in my chest so fiercely it felt like it might shatter my ribs. I could clearly smell his scent. Unlike the usual cedar or earthy aroma common among our kind, this one carried a cold, briny tang of the ocean, reminiscent of the sea just before a storm, brimming with a power that couldn't be underestimated. Finley slowly turned around. In the faint mist, his deep blue eyes seemed even more profound. His gaze swept across my face and then settled on my tightly clenched shoulders. A barely perceptible smile curled at the corner of his lips. "Don't be so tense, Amy. I was just wondering, why would a lost little wolf cub hide among humans?" "I'm not lost, and I'm certainly no little wolf cub." I shot him a sharp glance, my voice laced with the pent-up bitterness that had been simmering inside me for 4 long years. "I'm doing just fine here. I don't need some stranger of an alpha boss interfering where it's none of his business." "Doing just fine?" He took a step forward, and suddenly the weight of his presence pressed down on me like an invisible force. Instinctively, I took a step back, but my heels hit the trunk of the tree behind me, leaving me with nowhere else to retreat. His height towered over mine by more than half a head, and his shadow loomed over me, enveloping me completely, as if I'd been cornered by a hunter, trapped like prey. "You're hiding among humans, afraid even to awaken your wolf spirit, fleeing your own pack. This is what you call doing just fine? It's none of your business." I raised my voice, the fury and resentment in my chest surging up all at once. James's mockery, the pity from my clan members, the 4 years of painstakingly careful pretense, all of it was laid bare by his single remark. I clenched my fists, my nails digging deeply into the palms of my hands. Whether or not I have a wolf soul, whether or not I should return to the pack, those are all my own business. Just who are you anyway? Why do you keep dogging me? Finley's gaze grew solemn. The hint of laughter had vanished, leaving only the alpha's unmistakable authority. "Who I am doesn't matter," he said, his voice low and steady, tinged with an unshakable certainty. "What matters is this. Your wolf's soul hasn't remained dormant. It's been sealed away by Itsuji." "You're lying," I almost shouted. After 18 years of struggle, after countless moonlit nights filled with hope and disappointment, how could it possibly be my own doing that I'd sealed it away? I jerked my hand up, trying to push him away, but he grabbed my wrist in an iron grip. His palm was hot and powerful, locking me in place like a vice. No matter how hard I struggled, I couldn't break free. "I'm not lying," he said, his voice dropping even lower, carrying a note of absolute conviction. "Back then, when James publicly humiliated you, the despair and self-doubt you felt inside became the strongest chains of all. You're afraid you might really be a weakling, afraid of being abandoned all over again. So deep down, you've unconsciously refused to awaken your wolf spirit. You're protecting yourself, yet at the same time, you're imprisoning yourself." His words were like a sharp dagger, precisely piercing through the layers of my carefully constructed armor and striking straight into the most vulnerable part of my heart. My whole body shuddered, and my eyes instantly welled up with tears, but I bit down hard on my lip, refusing to let the tears fall. "Let me go," I roared, swinging my other hand toward him in an attempt to hit him, but he effortlessly sidestepped. With a swift motion, he grabbed my other wrist, pinning both my arms behind my back with a strength that sent waves of sharp pain shooting through my shoulder blades. "You're hurting me." I struggled desperately, my back pressed tightly against his warm chest, where I could clearly feel his steady, powerful heartbeat. The cold air emanating from him carried an intense alpha dominance, making every single hair on my body stand on end. A primal fear began to creep up my spine, sending chills racing through my entire body. Only pain can wake you up. Finley's voice echoed in my ear, his breath hot and heavy. Amelia, you're not weak. Your wolf spirit is stronger than many werewolves, yet you just can't bring yourself to face it. Back then, James abandoned you because he was the one who was foolish, not you. Shut up. I jerked violently, my emotions spiraling completely out of control. You don't know a thing. How dare you lecture me about my life? I threw all my strength into pushing backward, trying to break free from his grip, but his arm felt as solid as steel, unyielding. On the contrary, my struggling only made him tighten his hold on my wrist even more, sending a wave of searing pain through me that made me gasp sharply. I know how badly you've been craving to awaken. I know you dream at night of running through the forest. I know that every time you see the full moon, you unconsciously clench your fists. His voice softened slightly, yet still carried an uncanny intensity. I also know that James is regretting what he's done now. He's looking for you. The 3 words James felt like a poisoned needle, plunging straight into my heart. I froze mid-struggle, my body suddenly drained of all strength, leaving only an overwhelming chill. I don't want to hear a single thing he has to say. My voice trembled. Let me go, I'm going home. But Finley didn't release me. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his lips almost brushing against my earlobe. Do you really think you can hide from him? Your scent is already burned into my heart, and sooner or later, James will find his way here too. Either come with me. I'll help you awaken your wolf spirit and let you truly take control of your life, or wait for James to come back under the guise of reconciliation and bind you once more to his alpha aura. His words hit me like a sledgehammer. I jerked my head around, ready to glare at him, but accidentally caught his gaze instead. In his deep blue eyes, there was neither mockery nor pity, only an unshakable determination, and a hint of some complex emotion I couldn't quite decipher. I'm not going with you, and I'm never speaking to James again, I said through gritted teeth, struggling once more. Let me go. This time, Finley didn't press me any further. Instead, he casually released his grip. Losing my balance, I stumbled forward a few steps before barely managing to steady myself. I immediately spun around, staring at him warily, my hands protectively crossed over my chest. 2 distinct red marks already marred my wrists, burning with searing pain. Finley straightened up, his gaze now carrying a touch of amusement. You're tougher than I'd imagined. But that's fine. I've got all the patience in the world. He took 2 steps forward and stopped about a meter away from me. Remember, he said, as long as you want to awaken the wolf within you, if you ever wish to break free from the label of weak, I'll always be here for you. Before Finley's footsteps had even faded into the forest path, I was suddenly startled by hurried footsteps behind me, accompanied by a voice that sent shivers down my spine. The familiar cry, Amelia! I stiffened and turned around to see James standing at the entrance of the path. His suit jacket billowed in the morning breeze, his face flushed from rushing through the woods, yet still radiating an urgency that was impossible to hide. At first, his gaze fell upon me, filled with the ecstatic joy of finding what he'd thought lost, but when his eyes swept over my hands, clasped tightly against my chest, and then down to the vivid red marks on my wrists, his expression instantly turned icy cold. Following the direction of his gaze, I realized that Finley hadn't gone far at all. He was leaning casually against a nearby tree trunk, hands deep in his pockets, a faint, mocking smile playing on his lips. His piercing blue eyes were brimming with blatant defiance. What did you do to her? James's voice was low and dangerous, radiating the unique dominance of an alpha male as he took slow, deliberate steps toward us. He'd grown even taller than 4 years ago, his shoulders broader, and his overall presence more commanding than ever. Yet the obsession in those eyes remained exactly the same as it had been all those years ago. I instinctively took a step back, trying to put some distance between us, but James reached out and grabbed my arm. His grip was fierce, utterly unyielding, a stark contrast to Finley's earlier restraint. This was control laced with possessiveness. Let go of me. I struggled, feeling both disgust and fear welling up inside me. James, we've been over for ages. Over? He tightened his grip suddenly, sending a sharp wave of pain through me that made me gasp. The bond of companionship chosen by the gods isn't something you can just snap off whenever you feel like it. Amiria, come back with me. I know I was wrong. Back then, I was just too stubborn and shouldn't have labeled you as weak. What's the point of saying all this now? I sneered, yet my eyes uncontrollably welled up with tears. When you publicly humiliated me 4 years ago, why didn't you think about today? James, it wasn't your stubbornness that was the problem. It was that from the very beginning, you kept thinking I wasn't good enough for you. I never did, he protested hastily, his eyes flickering with a hint of panic. I just cared so much about the future of our people. All these years, I've been searching for you. I knew you weren't doing well. Come back with me. I'll give you the best life possible, make you the most honored Luna. The most honored Luna? A cold voice cut in. Finley slowly straightened up from beside the tree trunk and began walking toward us, step by step. James, you're still the same. You always think you can give others the best, but you've never once asked what they actually want. James suddenly turned his head and glared at him, his eyes brimming with hostility. This is between her and me. There's no place for you, some outsider alpha, to stick your nose in. An outsider? Finley chuckled softly, stepping closer to me until he stood face to face with James. She's been living in this little town for 4 years now. This place feels more like home to her than your entire pack ever has. And as for you, you're just a passing stranger who hurt her. I hurt her. James's voice grew heated, his grip on my arm tightening even further. At least I had the guts to confront her heart to heart, unlike you, who always hides behind the excuse of pack loyalty, running away from your own feelings and hurting the one you claim to love. Finley's gaze grew dark, and the cold aura around him intensified. His presence clashed with James's imposing presence, making the air around them seem to freeze solid. Caught between two alphas, I was overwhelmed by their intense presence, my chest feeling tight and suffocating. The pain in my wrist continued to spread, and James's grip on my arm was excruciating. I could no longer hold back. I used all my strength to let out a roar. Enough! Stop talking already. I jerked my body violently, trying to break free from James's hold, but he refused to let go. Seeing this, Finley reached out and grabbed James's wrist, his voice icy cold. Let her go. You dare give me orders? James glared at him, his grip tightening even more. I just don't want to see her suffer anymore. Suddenly, Finley's gaze turned sharp and piercing, and with a sudden, forceful move, he yanked hard. There was a faint crack, and James let out a muffled groan of pain, instinctively releasing my arm. Taking advantage of the moment, I stepped back several paces, putting distance between myself and these two men locked in an intense standoff. James rubbed his wrist, which had been painfully pinched by Finley, his eyes blazing with fury, almost ready to burst forth. You're asking for it. Before he could finish speaking, he lunged suddenly at Finley. The two towering alphas were instantly locked in a fierce struggle, their fists clashing with a muffled thud that echoed sharply against the quiet lakeshore. Finley's movements were swift and ruthless, while James relied on years of combat experience to hold his ground tenaciously. Their wolf spirits seemed to stir restlessly, the air pressure around them dropping so low it felt suffocating. The green grass by the lake was whipped into a frenzy by their violent motions. As I watched the two men locked in combat, my mind was in utter chaos. James's guilt and determination, combined with Finley's enigmatic aura and commanding presence, felt like two invisible nets tightly entangling me. I instinctively took a step backward, but accidentally slipped on the wet ground and tumbled toward the icy surface of the lake. Amelia! Amy! Two cries of alarm rang out simultaneously. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the icy chill of the lake water, but the plunge I'd been expecting never came. A warm hand wrapped around my waist, gently pulling me back to safety. I opened my eyes and found myself staring into Finley's deep, sapphire blue gaze. Just moments ago, He'd been locked in a fierce struggle with James. Now, he stood firmly in front of me, his back shielding me completely. Meanwhile, James stood not far away, his face etched with a mix of panic and frustration, his eyes filled with unspoken worry as he looked at me. In the next instant, the alpha, who now ruled over the entire pack, suddenly dropped to his knees with a heavy thud onto the damp grass. The morning dew splashed up, soaking the legs of his expensive suit trousers, while mud spread out in dark smudges around his knees. His body trembled slightly, not from fear, but from an overwhelming wave of remorse that left him unable to even straighten his spine. "Amelia," he whispered, his voice was hoarse, as if rasped by sandpaper, laced with a suppressed sob. "It's been 4 years. 4 years I've been searching for you. Every single day I've wondered, if only I hadn't said those things that day, if only I hadn't pushed you away, would you have had to suffer so much?" He slowly reached out his hand, his fingertips trembling as he carefully extended them toward mine. That very hand, the one that had waved me off 4 years ago, sending me sprawling onto the edge of the bonfire, now carried a humility bordering on reverence, as if afraid that even the slightest touch might scare me away. I know I was wrong, absolutely ridiculously wrong. I shouldn't have defined you as weak. I shouldn't have let the responsibilities of our tribe take precedence over you. You're not a burden. You're the partner I was destined to have, the only person in this life I've ever wanted to protect. Just as his fingertips brushed against the back of my hand, I jerked my hand away as if I'd been burned. The faintly cool sensation instantly dredged up all the humiliation from 4 years ago, the scorn under everyone's gaze, the awkwardness of being pushed aside, the pitying looks of my people. All the pain surged back to the surface in that instant. "Don't touch me." My voice trembled ever so slightly, not from emotion, but from a visceral reaction of resistance. "James, you've never loved me at all. You've always loved the stronger version of me, the one who could bring you glory and be worthy of the alpha status. As for me, I was never the person you really wanted." His hand hung motionless in midair, its palm leaving a vivid red mark that seemed to burn even more intensely against the backdrop of the room. James stared at me, his eyes slowly losing their stubborn resolve, replaced by utter despair. He slowly let go of my hand, his body swayed unsteadily, nearly collapsing onto his knees. "Enough," I interrupted him, wiping away the tears from my face. My gaze grew unbearably firm. "James, 4 years ago, you yourself severed all ties between us. Now, even if you were to kneel before me or beg for forgiveness, there's no going back. Just leave. Don't ever disturb my life again." He knelt on the ground, looking at me with tears streaming down his face, yet unable to utter a single word. Finley wrapped his arm around my waist and turned to leave. Just as he took 2 steps forward, James's heart-wrenching roar suddenly echoed behind us, like a lone wolf driven into a desperate corner. "Amelia, do you really think your wolf spirit will never awaken?" My feet came to an abrupt halt, and for a moment, every drop of blood in my body seemed to freeze. That one sentence struck like a bolt of lightning, shattering the confusion and obsessions that had plagued me for 18 years. Without thinking, I found myself turning around. James was still kneeling where he'd been, his knees sunk deep into the mud. His suit trousers were covered with bits of grass and dirt, leaving him looking utterly disheveled. His hair hung wildly across his forehead, his face streaked with tears, yet his eyes burned with a nearly gung-on determination, as if he were about to spill out not only the secret he'd kept hidden deep within his heart for 4 long years, but also all the remorse he'd carried inside. "Those elders, they're the ones who sealed your wolf spirit," he roared, his voice hoarse to the point of nearly breaking. Every word carried the weight of blood and tears. "Back when you were 16, on that full moon night, your wolf spirit was supposed to awaken. But the elders realized your wolf spirit was a guardian wolf, a rarity seen only once in a century. Its power was simply too immense. Once awakened, it would shatter the existing power balance within our pack." My mind went utterly blank, my ears ringing with a deafening hum. What power balance? What guardian wolf? These words ricocheted through my brain like shards of glass. I shook my head instinctively. No way. You're lying. I'm not lying. James suddenly sat up sharply, ignoring the pain in his knees, stumbling toward me. But Finley reached out and stopped him. Through Finley's arm, James stared straight at me, his eyes filled with urgency and agony. I overheard the elders' secret plot back then, but I was too cowardly. I was blinded by Alpha's power and the tribe's rules. I didn't dare to defy the elders, let alone tell you the truth. All I could do was force you to leave. At least that way, the elders wouldn't lay a hand on you. His hand slipped through Finley's arm, trembling as it reached toward my cheek. His fingertips were covered in mud, yet they carried an honesty unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Amelia, I was wrong. I shouldn't have lied to you. I shouldn't have made you bear the label of weak for 4 whole years. I shouldn't have forced you to hide so carefully in the human town. Your wolf spirit isn't weak. It's so powerful that even the elders fear it. Finley's body stiffened slightly, and the arm wrapped around my waist tightened just a bit. A complex glimmer flashed briefly in his eyes, but he didn't stop James from speaking. As I looked into James's eyes filled with pain and urgency, I saw the dirt smudges on his palm and the red marks where I'd previously scratched him. My heart was roiling like a storm-tossed sea. For 18 years, I've prayed countless times on full moon nights, doubted myself countless times because I couldn't shift into my wolf form, and endured countless times the pity and contempt of my own people. Now it turns out none of this was because I'm weak. It was all part of a conspiracy that had been meticulously planned from the very beginning. Why did they seal me away? My voice trembled ever so slightly, and tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. Because once the wolf spirit within you awakens, it'll automatically recognize its master. And the master you'd choose? Never the power center of our clan. James's voice grew low and heavy, laced with profound helplessness. The elders were terrified that once you awakened, you'd shake their authority. Even more, they feared you'd lead our clan in a direction they could no longer control. They threatened me if I didn't cooperate, they'd completely lift the seal on you. And then your wolf spirit, left unchecked, would consume your sanity. Suddenly, he dropped his knees and slammed his forehead hard onto the muddy grass, the sound dull and heavy. Back then, I had no choice but to force you to leave. I thought as long as you stayed away from our clan, the seal would gradually weaken. And once I'd gained control over the clan's power, I could help you break it. But I never imagined that 4 years would pass so quickly. I've been searching for you for 4 whole years, and the Elder's seal has only grown stronger and stronger. He raised his head, his forehead smeared with dirt and bits of grass, his eyes filled with pleading. Reaching out again, he tried to touch my wrist. Amelia, come back with me. Right now, I'm the true ruler of the clan. I can protect you. I can help you lift the seal and let your wolf spirit truly awaken. I know I owe you so much. I'm willing to spend the rest of my life making it up to you, even if you never forgive me. Just as his fingertips were about to brush against the red scar on my wrist, Finley suddenly turned sharply, stepping in front of me with a cold, icy stare directed at James. Do you really think she'd still believe you? Back then, you chose silence, chose to protect her by hurting her. Now that you're finally speaking the truth, it's nothing more than an attempt to ease your own guilt. Finley's palm rested lightly on my wrist. The warm touch helped clear my muddled thoughts a bit. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes filled with a hint of curiosity, yet mostly brimming with determination. What he said might be true, but you need to understand. The path to lifting the seal was never meant to be chosen for you by someone else. James stared at me, his eyes heavy with despair and resentment. He seemed about to say something more, but Finley's cold gaze cut him off mid-sentence. Suddenly, hurried footsteps echoed through the woods, accompanied by the low growl of a werewolf, a predator stalking silently through the dark night. Lord James, a voice called out, the elders have ordered you to take Amelia back to the clan for trial. 5 shadowy figures burst from the trees, each clad in black combat gear, their eyes fierce and bloodthirsty. They exuded an aura that shared the same origin as James's, but was far more savage and brutal. These were the Elder's personal guard, notorious for their ruthless efficiency and unrelenting ferocity. They closed in on me in a fan-shaped formation, their gazes fixed firmly on me, as if they were staring down their prey. "Get out of my way!" James shot to his feet, though his knees still ached faintly. Yet in an instant, he shifted back into his alpha's commanding stance, stepping protectively in front of me. "She's my mate. There's no place for you to interfere." "Lord James," the lead guard sneered, his eyes brimming with contempt, "you've been blinded by love and are defying the Elder's will." The leader took another step forward, his voice cold and sharp. "The Elders have spoken. Amelie carries the forbidden wolf spirit within her. If we don't bring her back and seal it away soon, disaster could strike. If you try to stop us, you'll be declaring war on our entire clan." Before he'd even finished speaking, the lead guard suddenly transformed. His body swelled dramatically, and gray wolf fur instantly enveloped him from head to toe. Sharp claws sprang forth, and a pungent, bloody scent filled the air as he lunged toward me. James had been prepared all along. He, too, transformed into a massive black wolf, meeting the charge head-on. The two werewolves collided with a thunderous crash, the sound of their claws tearing through the air piercingly loud and ear-splitting. "Protect yourself," Finley hissed softly, wrapping his arm around my waist and pushing me backward. Then, he transformed into a massive golden wolf, its fur gleaming metallic under the sunlight. His body was several inches larger than James's and the lead guard's. With a powerful leap, he positioned himself in front of me, immediately engaging in fierce combat with the other two guards. His sharp fangs sank into their necks. The remaining two guards seized the opportunity to charge toward me, their eyes devoid of any hesitation, only the cold, unyielding resolve to carry out their orders. I instinctively took a step back, but found myself blocked by the trunk of a tree behind me. Just as a werewolf's razor-sharp claw was about to rip into my shoulder, James suddenly broke free from his opponent, slamming into the guard with incredible force. His black wolf form blurred into a fleeting shadow under the sunlight. "Don't touch her!" James's wolfish roar shook the air, yet he failed to notice the sneak attack from the guard lurking behind him. A pair of vicious claws latched onto his hind leg, drawing a string of crimson droplets. The chaos escalated in an instant as three massive wolves began to brawl by the lakeside. The wolves' howls, the sound of sharp claws tearing flesh, and the dull thuds of their bodies colliding blended together, sending dirt and bits of grass flying everywhere. The surface of the lake rippled violently under the impact. Trapped right in the middle of the battle, I trembled with fear, yet had nowhere to run. Finley, fighting alone against two opponents, still held the upper hand. Each swipe of his golden wolf claws carried tremendous force, leaving one guard's shoulder torn to a bloody pulp. But the guard squad had clearly come prepared. Each member was fearless and utterly determined. Even badly wounded, they continued to fight back with ferocity. "Amelia, hurry over here," James shouted at me, pushing aside his opponent right in front of him, his black wolf eyes filled with panic. Just as I took my first step forward, I was suddenly grabbed by the ankle of a fallen guard. He hadn't shifted into his wolf form, yet he possessed incredible strength, gripping my legs so tightly that I couldn't move a muscle. "Got you," he sneered, his other hand swiftly drawing a dagger that gleamed with a silvery sheen, a silver blade specially crafted to weaken werewolves. I struggled in terror, but his grip only tightened further. Just as the silver blade was about to pierce my calf, Finley suddenly turned his head. His golden wolf eyes flashed with a fierce intensity. He broke free from the opponent holding him and leapt toward me, throwing his body over mine to shield me from harm. The silver blade grazed his back, leaving a deep gash that stained his golden fur crimson with blood. "Finley!" I cried out, my heart wrenching in agony, as if it had been clenched tightly. Finley let out a low grunt, but didn't pause for a moment. He spun around and sank his teeth into the guard's neck, and blood erupted in an instant. The guard released his hold, collapsed onto the ground, convulsed briefly, then fell still. But this brief delay gave the lead guard the opening he'd been waiting for. He dodged James's attack, transformed into human form, and with a chain wrapped in magical charms in his hand, he flung it toward me with all his might. The chain sliced through the air with a deafening whistling sound, precisely wrapping itself around my arm. The charms burned into my skin, sending a searing pain coursing through me. "Amelia!" James roared, charging forward, but two other guards immediately grabbed him, holding him tightly in place. The lead guard tugged hard on the chain, and I stumbled backward. My arm was blistered and swollen from the burns inflicted by the charms. The pain was so intense that I nearly lost consciousness. Seeing this, Finley's eyes blazed with murderous intent. He transformed into human form once more, ignoring the wound on his back, and with one powerful grip, he yanked the chain free. "Run!" Finley grabbed my hand and turned sharply, sprinting down the path toward the lakeside. "Think you can get away?" The lead guard refused to give up, transforming again into a wolf and lunging after us. Seeing this, James exerted all his strength to fend off the guards around him and lunged toward the lead guard, sinking his teeth firmly into the guard's hind leg. "Amelia, run. I'll hold them off." I glanced back just in time to see James's massive black wolf locked in fierce combat with the lead guard. The wolf had already sustained several new wounds, yet it clung tenaciously to its opponent. Finley grabbed my arm and pulled me forward with all his might. Blood dripped from my back onto the grass, leaving a trail of crimson marks behind us. The howls of wolves and the sounds of fighting grew fainter and farther away, but the pain in my arm showed no sign of easing. The burning sensation from the spell spread through my veins, making my head spin and my vision blur. After running who knew how long, Finley suddenly stopped and helped me collapse beneath a towering tree. "Are you okay?" His voice was tinged with urgency as he gently touched the wound on my arm, his eyes filled with deep concern. I shook my head, trying to speak, but the pain and excessive blood loss caused my vision to blur, and I collapsed into his arms. Just before losing consciousness, all I could hear was Finley's anxious cries and the sound of his footsteps as he carried me onward, the chaos behind us fading away into the distance. When I came to, a faint scent, a blend of turpentine and antiseptic, lingered at the tip of my nose, replacing the damp earth and the smell of blood from the lakeside. I lay on a soft single bed, covered with a woolen blanket that smelled of sunshine, the kind of fluffy, comforting texture I loved so much. The room wasn't large. Its walls were made of rough, unfinished wooden planks, and in the corner sat several wooden crates. Heavy, dark curtains hung by the window, blocking out almost all light from outside, leaving only a dim, yellowish wall lamp casting a warm glow across the floor. "You're awake?" Finley's voice came from beside me, tinged with a barely perceptible note of relief. I turned my head and saw him sitting on a wooden stool by the side of the bed. The wound on his back had been briefly bandaged. A faint stain of blood seeped through the white gauze, clearly indicating that the wound had reopened during his recent run. He no longer exuded the fierce intensity he'd displayed earlier. His shirt sleeves were rolled up to his forearms, revealing strong, well-defined biceps adorned with traces of fresh, still damp blood. "Where am I?" My voice was hoarse, and the burning sensation in my arm remained vivid. As I reached out to touch it, Finley gently pressed my hand down. "This is a safe house on the outskirts of town, a place I've prepared long ago," he said. His fingertips carried a slightly cool temperature, and his movements were surprisingly gentle, unlike those of an alpha who'd just come from a fierce battle. "Don't touch it. The burn from the spell requires a special ointment for treatment. Otherwise, it'll leave a scar." He stood up and walked over to the wooden chest in the corner, opened it, and took an antique ceramic jar along with a clean roll of gauze. As he approached the bed, he leaned slightly forward, and his presence enveloped me with a cool scent, faintly tinged with antiseptic, but somehow strangely reassuring. "Just bear with it a bit. It might sting a little," he murmured softly, then unscrewed the ceramic jar. A wave of refreshing herbal aroma filled the air. He dipped his fingertip into the ointment and carefully applied just the right amount to the red, swollen, and blistered wound on my arm. The moment the ointment touched my skin, a brief sharp sting shot through, but it was quickly replaced by a soothing coolness, and the burning sensation gradually subsided. His movements were exceptionally gentle, his fingertips exerting just the right amount of pressure as they carefully avoided the broken blisters, spreading the ointment evenly little by little. Unconsciously, I tensed my body slightly, my gaze fixed on his focused profile. The dim yellow light outlined his sharp jawline, and his long eyelashes cast delicate shadows beneath his lids. His deep blue eyes were full of earnest concern, no longer carrying that earlier hint of challenge or dominance, but radiating nothing but pure care. Why? Why are you saving me? I couldn't help but speak, breaking the silence in the room. Finley's movements paused for a moment, and he looked up at me with a complex expression in his eyes. What do you think I'm doing it for? I don't know, I said, avoiding his gaze and staring at the ceiling. You're an alpha. Your own pack has its own territory. There's no need for you to go against James's pack, or even get hurt, just for the sake of a weakling like me who can't even awaken his wolf spirit. You're not weak, Finley said in a deep, firm voice, lowering his head again to continue tending to the wound. James was telling the truth. The wolf spirit within you is a guardian wolf that comes around only once in a century, so powerful that it makes the elders wary. They sealed you away not because you're weak, but precisely because you're too strong. I jerked my head toward him. You've known all along? Yeah. He nodded frankly. I came to you precisely because I want to lift the seal on you. Why me? Finley paused in his application of the ointment, raising his eyes to meet mine. His gaze held a depth that I couldn't quite decipher. Because the awakening of the wolf spirit's guardian is tied to the fate of all werewolves. The elders' selfish motives haven't just imprisoned you, they've also robbed the entire werewolf clan of its most precious protective power. And I'm the only one who can safely lift your seal. His words sent a shiver through my heart. It turned out his persistence wasn't without reason after all, but the truth behind it was far more complicated than I'd ever imagined. His movements as he wrapped the bandage were deft and practiced, layer upon layer carefully encasing the wound and tying a neat knot. Only when he'd finished did he stand up and turn to tend to the injury on his own back. Watching him struggle to raise his arm, trying to undo the bandage behind his back, I hesitated for a moment before speaking. Let me help you. Finley glanced back at me for a moment, his eyes briefly flashing with surprise before he nodded. I stood up and walked behind him, carefully untying the gauze wrapped around his back. The wound was deeper than I'd imagined. A long scar stretched from his shoulder blade down to his side, with flesh and skin partially torn open and still oozing a faint trickle of blood. Just thinking that this wound had been inflicted to protect me stirred a complex mix of emotions within me. I dipped my finger into the ointment and gently applied it to his injury. Finley's body tensed slightly, but he didn't make a sound. Only his breathing grew just a bit quicker when I touched the deeper parts of the wound. I'm sorry, I said softly. Sorry for what? He asked in return. It's because of me that you got hurt. Protecting you is something I do willingly. Finley's voice came from ahead, hoarse yet steady. Amelia, you don't have to feel indebted to me. What you need to do is awaken your wolf spirit as soon as possible, take control of your own destiny, and stop letting anyone else manipulate you. I remained silent, continuing to bandage his wound. The room fell silent once more, save for the faint crackling of the wall lamp and the steady rhythm of our breathing. After finishing the bandaging, just as I was about to step back, Finley suddenly turned around and gently reached out to grasp my wrist. His palm was warm, his grip firm yet gentle. There was absolutely no hint of coercion in it. Trust me, his gaze was utterly resolute. I'll help you break the seal and let you truly awaken. When that day comes, you'll have the freedom to return to your pack, stay in this little town, or even come with me. No matter what you choose, I'll be right there by your side, supporting you every step of the way. His eyes burned with such intensity that I found myself at a loss for words. I looked into his deep, sapphire blue eyes, and there, reflected within them, was not only my own image, but also the warm glow of the wall lamp. At this very moment, I suddenly realized that maybe I no longer needed to run away. I gave a gentle nod. Though my voice was soft, it carried a resolve I'd never felt before. All right. Finley's face broke into a relieved smile, a smile so bright it seemed as if the ice and snow were melting, and sunlight was piercing through the clouds. He released my wrist, turned around, and walked over to the window. He drew back a sliver of the curtain and gazed out at the dark night sky. Get some good rest tonight. I'll tell you how to lift the seal tomorrow. I returned to the bed, lay down, and pulled the wool blanket over myself. The glow from the wall lamp still felt warm, and Finley's figure by the window stood tall and striking. That night, I didn't have another nightmare. In my dream, there was no longer James's mockery, no pity from my clan members, just a vast forest bathed in moonlight, with a golden giant wolf running ahead, turning its head to call out to me in a gentle voice. And I know that my path to awakening has only just begun.